A 2014 survey of 400 employees showed that 91% of individuals believe critical thinking is an important part of being successful in the workplace. On the flip side of this, does this mean a lack of critical thinking could hinder your success in your job? Well, we're afraid so, Aluxer. But don't worry, in today's video, we'll take a look at 15 ways to develop your critical thinking skills. So let's jump right in. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Number 1. Question assumptions. There's no denying it. We assume quite a number of things as humans. We assume things about our workplace, about our relationships, and most importantly, about ourselves. A cheeky quote says, "When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me." While this might be quite a funny way to put it, it does ring true. Making assumptions reduces the chances of innovation, but when you question these assumptions, it spirals into an extensive critical thinking process, which more often than not tends to lead to innovative ideas. Questioning your assumptions helps you to critically assess everything you think you know, which in itself is a great tool for developing your critical thinking. Number 2. Become self-aware. When you become more self-aware, it simply means you've become more aware of your values, your thought processes, your personality, and your morals. But did you also know that in becoming self-aware, you're simultaneously developing your critical thinking skills? That's right. As you objectively think about what defines your personality, your likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, goals and dreams, you're honing your critical thinking skills. Becoming self-aware will also help you to see the need to develop those critical thinking skills. Number 3. Adopt TED-Ed's 5-step process. In a 2016 video, TED-Ed outlined 5 steps that can help you develop critical thinking and solve different kinds of problems. The first step is to understand and formulate your question. Now, this simply means that you must understand the reason why you're making a certain decision, the why behind your critical thinking. At this point, it's equally as important to understand the biases and facts surrounding this decision. Next, you have to gather your information. This is basically an extension of the first process, but way more intensive. At this stage, based on your understanding of your question, you gather relevant information that could affect your decision. The next and most important step is application. Here, you've got to take action and apply everything you've discovered. At this point, you have to start thinking critically by asking important questions. What values and concepts have you now adopted? Are you being logical here? Have you made assumptions at any point? Your answers to these questions will help you find the underlying meaning behind your decision, which can, in a way, affect or reinforce your conclusions. Moving forward, the 4th step involves understanding the implications of your decisions. So, take for instance, you've decided to pay $1,000 for a business class. What are the implications of this action if things don't go according to plan? Aside from losing $1,000, what are the chances that this class will help you land a well-paying job? In making a decision, always strive to consider the long-term and short-term implications, as it'll help you to see things more clearly. And finally, you must explore other point of views before taking action. Your POV is simply one of many, so widen that view up. Number 4. Evaluate your mental process. Fun fact, the human mind works just like a computer. It collects and processes information, and it can store this information for later use. Now that we've got a formula for how your mind works, doesn't this suggest that we can better understand the inner workings of our minds? Of course we can. You can study how your mind receives and processes information. That is how you react to certain situations. This understanding is a great way to become mentally efficient, and as you perhaps already guessed, mental efficiency is a necessary factor for critical thinking. Evaluating your mental processes also gives you the ability to properly analyze situations before making important decisions. Number 5, ask questions. When you're not too sure about something, when you don't particularly understand something, ask questions, Luxor. Asking questions is no doubt one of the best ways to get information. It could be from a person or a search engine, but what matters most is the fact you made an effort to learn, which in itself is necessary for critical thinking. However, it's not completely about asking questions, but what you do with the answer is equally as important. Do you take the answer at face value and question nothing, or do you accept the answer and investigate every bit of it? If you go with the second option, well, congratulations, you're on the path to developing strong critical thinking skills. Number 6, learn to investigate. At number 5, we mentioned the need to investigate answers, but here we're showing you how to properly investigate every bit of information you find. The first step is to identify and evaluate every existing evidence you can find. Have you been in this type of situation or challenge in the past? How did you react? What did the experience teach you? Next, collect and analyze data, and this is where you outline the facts of the situation and what each fact means for you. And finally, take action based on the conclusions from your investigations. Investigating situations, rather than acting on impulse, reduces your chances of making a poor choice. Instead, it sharpens your critical thinking skills while also helping you to make better decisions. Number 7. Identify patterns. Patterns are everywhere, you just have to be willing to see them. You can get started by trying to notice patterns around you, around your home, around your workplace, even out with your friends. You can also identify patterns in your thought processes. Trying to identify these patterns is sort of a brain exercise, and since you have to look beyond the obvious to see these patterns, it naturally develops your critical thinking abilities. So next time you feel the need to exercise your mind, focus your attention on something specific and try to find interesting patterns. And remember, you don't always have to find patterns. The thought process is just as important. Number 8, be a daydreamer. According to a 2009 study at the University of British Columbia, the executive network, the region of the brain associated with focused problem solving, is also the area of the brain that lights up during daydreaming. When you daydream, you create new and complex worlds and interesting ideas. And usually when we daydream, it's to imaginatively solve a difficult problem that reality has put before us. You are stuck in traffic. Of course you daydream about having the ability to fly or being the fastest person alive. To constantly activate the executive network of your brain that improves critical thinking, this study suggests that you daydream as much as you can. So go ahead, Luxor, spend some time creating fanciful situations and just see what that does for your critical thinking in the long term. Number 9, feed your mind. The human mind, just like the body in which it lives, requires food to remain sharp. It's important we develop our imaginative abilities, but how do we do that? Well, for starters, reading stretches the boundaries of the mind. It kind of forces you to be imaginative. Have you ever read a fictional book without some sort of picture in your mind? That is your imagination at work. One other great way to feed your mind is through meditation. This incredibly powerful and age-old practice is an interesting way to clear your mind and help you to manage your anxiety and stress. If your mind is constantly noisy, it naturally becomes very difficult to think critically, and this is where meditation can help silence the noise. Number 10, be open to other points of views. Earlier in the video, we mentioned exploring other POVs. How about we give that a closer look right now? Most times, arguments happen because we're not willing to accept a person's point of view. Sometimes, we also suffer with internal conflict simply because we refuse to consider more than our own POV. Now, if you stick to just one point of view, you are robbing yourself of the chance to explore situations from other angles. And that's not all. You're also refusing a chance to learn more about a situation or a challenge. However, when you accept and analyze diverse points of view, you're embarking on a critical thinking journey, which places these POVs side by side and helps you to see the pros and cons of each one. So, by becoming open to diverse points of view, you are simultaneously improving your critical thinking skills. Number 11. Learn to form your own opinions. One of the most important points of critical thinking is to teach you how to think on your own. Critical thinking aims at helping us to form our own opinions based on the information that we've been able to collect. To form your own opinion, question your biases and assumptions. Constantly feed your mind. Think deeply and objectively about your values, strengths, and weaknesses, and write important things down, as this will help you to properly articulate your thoughts. Number 12. Identify the problem. Off the top of our heads, we can list the benefits of critical thinking, and one of those core functions of critical thinking is problem solving. But before you can solve any problem, you have to take the time to properly identify it. And identifying a problem isn't just about knowing the exact problem you have to solve. It's also about looking at the problem from diverse perspectives and asking important questions. You can ask yourself stuff like, what is the cause of this problem? Why is it happening at this time? Am I making any assumptions here? What are the different ways I can solve this problem? By answering these questions, you're bound to have a better understanding of the problem and how you can build a perfect solution. Number 13. Learn to accept criticism. Some would argue that criticism sucks. And, they have a couple of points, right? They can argue that criticism is an attack on our creative effort and it tends to demotivate a person. But come on, we know that criticism isn't a bad thing. In fact, accepting criticism is a quick way to get better at what you do. Instead of seeing constructive criticism as an attack on your work or your personality, learn to see it as an opportunity to identify loopholes in your work. If a loophole or mistake is discovered by a critic, would this mistake happen again? Definitely not. But accepting criticism is not all there is to it. It's just as important to reflect and understand the facts of the criticism, and this can only be achieved through critical thinking. Now, it's definitely safe to say that constructive criticism is a learning opportunity, right? Number 14. Always self-evaluate. Self-evaluation is a tested and trusted way to find out if you've been biased in forming your opinions or making a decision. Self-evaluation is the process of holding yourself up for investigation. This helps you to identify your thought process, current values, and most importantly, it assesses your strengths and weaknesses and gives you insight into where you need to make improvements. This self-evaluation process requires a heavy dose of critical thinking and consistency, but at the end of it all, you'll be so glad you did it. Number 15. Creative writing. There is a thin line between creative writing and critical thinking. And if you're super pumped about developing your critical thinking, then creative writing is definitely one more thing you should try. We all know what you're thinking. I'm not so good with writing stories or poems. Well, that's kind of the point here. You don't have to be the most talented creative writer, you just have to write. This is because creative writing helps your creative thinking, and yes, it's a great exercise to sharpen your critical thinking. So next time you want to sharpen your mind, try your hand at writing a story. Who knows, you might just be the next Nobel Prize winner for literature one day. And with that, Alexer, time for a curtain call. We hope you gained some insights here today on how to become a better critical thinker. The great news is that these tips will work for everyone. You just have to be resilient and dedicated toward becoming that critical thinker you want to be.